next team, the doers.
So who pays for the road when no one owns a car? So that's the question I want to pose to you today. So our challenge was what could be done with car data. And the specific criteria was how to get data from cars, service that we can provide with the data, how to combine data from cars and space and make it more valuable, how to secure the data and to provide businesses using this data and services. So our vision is to make road usage fair and sustainable for the future. With the introduction of electric vehicles, governments around the world are struggling to find an economic model that allows for the serviceability of road usage. So just to give you a global perspective, there are 1.1 billion cars around the world as of today, and within Australia specifically, there are 14 million vehicles on the road, just to give it a domestic point of view. So why now? With electric vehicle adoption, Australia lagging behind with less than 2% of vehicles on Australian roads today being electric. Norway are the leading adopters of electric vehicles with more than 56% of vehicles on the road being electric. And I'll explain why this plays a problem today. So the existing tax and levy revenue to pay for the roads and services that we use today are funded from the fuel levies and the vehicle registration that you pay from vehicle ownership. And vehicle ownership is decreasing every year with the introduction of Uber and less car sales every year happening. The current value of, or the current revenue that is pulled from the government every year is $18 billion in Australia, or we've calculated at about 10 cents per kilometre. So the problem is vehicle registration is done per engine size, cylinders and fuel. Electric vehicles don't have cylinders or use gasoline fuel. So the solution, we want to disrupt vehicle ownership and introduce a pay-as-you-go vehicle usage service. We're introducing a product that we're calling Iris, using space services to collate vehicle data telematics. So this is where we have the vehicle, we're using satellites to aggregate that data into our database hosted on Amazon Web Services, the largest cloud provider globally, and then present that information through a dashboard and using analytics to then present a oversight over your vehicle and accountability. So using the telematics data, we want to pull the GPS information, the kilometres and the carbon emissions of your vehicle. And using the vehicle identification number, which is a unique 16-digit number that's associated with every vehicle that's manufactured globally. So through partnerships with Myriota, who provides satellite services, Coda Wireless, who provide telematic modules which get inserted into existing vehicles and also new vehicles. These are two South Australian companies, and conveniently both spun out of UniSA. And then the sponsors of the actual project in itself, Continental. So our financial model, which we are proposing to governments to be able to maintain the levies with the introduction of electric vehicles, which are going to replace petroleum vehicles, is to charge them on distance per travelled, the vehicle weight, and a subscription fee for our services, as well as introducing a carbon tax to pay for the recycling of vehicles, because Australia is one of the only developed nations without a recycling policy for vehicles. The total amount of revenue that we would generate from this existing model, which would work with existing gasoline vehicles and electric vehicles, is $20 billion, or a 0.09 cent 9 cents kilometre per kilometre, regardless of vehicle ownership. It's based off distance travelled and the carbon emissions that your vehicle is emitting. So this is a simple concept dashboard that we've put together of the vehicles that we're potentially tracking with the GPS location. And then we can see the kilometres of the vehicles travelled and the estimated carbon emissions, which we'd eventually tax. And as you can see, or if you could look a bit closer, we're not tracking it per person. This is looking at it from a manufacturer point of view. So that's how many Mazdas and Fords, etc., through our data modelling. So we're making sure that this data is anonymous if you opt in. If you opt in as well. So the additional services that we can provide are insurance. So we can provide them the data to further evaluate their pay-as-you-go insurance services. For safety purposes, so for the emergency activation, so for example, if your vehicle is in an accident, Instead of having to phone up emergency services, it happens automatically through the satellite technology. Environmental purposes, so we can track vehicles for recycling and ensure that they're eventually recycled. And maintenance for the vehicle recalls, if your vehicle needs to be recalled for faulty brakes, for example, which has happened before. Our target customers are government to assist us in implementing the model and do further research, insurance companies who are looking to improve their risk assessment and reward driver behaviour, conscious, environmental friendly citizens, and every vehicle owner. This is our financial model. Within the next 5 years, we want to hit $1.8 billion if we can clip a ticket on every kilometre travelled by every person. Traction, so Darren Lovett has said this is a great concept with a definite need. He loves it. He's the director for the South Australian Space Industry. Myself, Claudia, Dennis, Yui, and Daniel, we've got business development, data scientists, product and data security, and sales and marketing, myself as an automotive researcher. We're seeking investment of $200,000 to do a pilot study and test with the South Australian Government and the National Transport Commission to validate this hypothesis. So vote for us so we can get to France and take this opportunity to the world without gravity pulling us down.
Did you ask?
It's only 6 minutes.
Did you ask Darren the $200,000?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Did you ask Darren?
Did you ask Darren? He works this week.
Darren, I'm asking everyone so we can figure it out.
Questions? So, can you do this right now with new cars in terms of the sensors that they have in the cars, or would you have to add something?
Yes,
every
well,
car?
that's literally what Coda Wireless
Yep.
it actually does, is they provide that technology to do that, but they haven't done it with satellite communications. That's why we want to bring Myriota and then use our economic model to finance and commercialise that, basically.
The types of things, you had a slide that was about the things that you would have to measure.
Yep.
What's satellite capability like at the moment? Like, are small satellites capable to measure all those elements?
So we want to combine
There's some R&D in that space.
Yeah, that's R&D. So that's why we want 200 grand to do the R&D and pilot study with the government to get all that information and put it together. So what we've been able to do in the short time frame of 24 hours is build an economic model that we can validate that works using the statistical data we've got access to, but we do need to do further R&D to do that.
And potentially some of those things can be measured in the car and then uploaded via the satellite into our own databases. So it doesn't all have to be recorded by the satellite.
Did you have a sort of list of parameters that you want to send to satellites, like temperature, or do you have a list of parameters that?
Yeah, so we could look at things like acceleration, the gyroscope, the balance of the car, hard braking. These are all things that we need to research to see how well we can track that within a car and still preserve privacy, of course.
But you didn't spend 5 minutes to check all of these parameters.
We did look at a lot of parameters, but we wanted to specifically highlight the ones that would be key for our financial model. So that's kilometres, location, and therefore distance travelled, and carbon emissions. And then from that, you'd fund so we can put that levy in place, then we can fund, okay, what else can we use it for? The emergency services becomes an additional thing that would need funding, and then that would take location and the setting up the signal to call that emergency service, which we haven't incorporated that.
In your financial modelling, I saw obviously you had estimated out your expenses. What sorts of things were what were you factoring in there?
Staff costs, researchers, so just a minimal team of 6 to 7 people to actually get this going. You're looking at 700-800 grand per year just to get that going if you were to finance the team. But again, we wanted to keep it to a pilot study, make the initial cost that's going to take, or the investment, reasonable, because at this stage it's still a hypothesis of that it could actually be played out, really.
And is there anywhere else, same sort of question again, like did you have the opportunity to look at best in class, like around the world? Is there anything that would be comparable? So
we compared it directly to Norway, why they are at 56+%. Long story short, is because they are promoting a lot of electric vehicle and manufacturing and regulating for it, where a lot of countries are against it because of the manufacturer influence. However, they introduce a carbon tax to offset that. And so then we incorporate that into our model to basically follow what the best are doing as well. So we know on a high level it works.
But this will be more reflective of each user's use of the road rather than just a blanket tax across everyone.
Yeah, a bit more layered.
Yes, yeah, a bit more finesse.
So if I'm in a Uber, do I pay?
It will be passed on to you by Uber, the
Right.
owner of the vehicle. Yeah.
She's happy. She said, oh, I'm sorry.
Business. Yeah.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.